So this is our first webinar on the Rising Lion Epic Fury operations. Welcome everybody to the JISS webinar, trying to figure out what's going on, did we arrive at where we are, and what should we expect and wish for as those two operations go on and develop. My name is Yossi Kuperwasser. I'm the head of the Jerusalem Institute of Strategy and Security. And we have, as always, with us a battery of experts that are going to tackle the difficult issues in front of them.
No.
Amidror, we hear you. We can start from wherever we want, but we shall start with General Amidror, Major General Amidror, in the reserve, of course, who is a senior fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, the Greg Horsehandler Senior Fellow. And General Amidror has written a lot about this issue. And I would ask him, Amidror, to touch upon three issues. First of all, the justification of the war. Secondly, where does this war stand in the long conflict of Israel with the Iranian Islamic regime? And third, what should be Israel's goals in this war? Please, Amidror.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think it's a very important war. After the 12 days in June, it was we understood that the Iranians got a huge blow in their nuclear project. We pushed them back for significant time, and the same can be said about the ballistic missiles. And the notion, at least my assessment, was that it will take them time to decide what to do next after what they got, and we have, and maybe they understand that we cannot accept the situation in which they are going on with both the nuclear and the missile project. What we learned that, unlike my assessment, the decision was clear and almost immediate. They decided to renew the production of the missiles. They got some help from China, and they decided to continue and to enhance it and to accelerate the capabilities to produce more and more ballistic missiles. And they begin to touch the areas of the nuclear facilities, trying to understand what can be done, what cannot be done. But it was clear that their decision is to find the way how to continue. I'm not sure that they found the way before the war, but they tried to find the way how to continue with the nuclear project. Parallel to that, and with some connection to the war, the demonstrations began in Iran. And it was clear that the regime is in its weakest point, but the regime understood it and didn't let the people on the street to win something. They butchered them, they slaughtered them, they killed more than 30,000 people. I understood it after a few days when I heard the heavy guns that they use against the heavy machine guns that they use against the demonstrators. It is something that no civilian people can stand and continue. It's impossible. What happened is in America, which, remember, the 12 days came towards the last day, picked the cherry of Fordo, did it very well. And the decision in America was to stop. And in a way, it was too early stop of the operation. I don't know what could be changed if we continue a few days, but it was immediate stop, and the Americans decided to negotiate with the Iranians. But I think that the minute that the President of the United States of America said to the protesters, guys, go to the street, the help is coming, kind of commitment was established by these words of the president. I really believe that the Americans wanted an agreement. We told them that agreement might be a good idea if it will be a good agreement, including relating to the missiles, not only the nuclear. And at the end, I think the two gentlemen met together and they understood, each of them from his point of view. From our point of view, it's more important to neutralize the ability of the Iranians to produce missiles and to continue with the nuclear issue. For the Americans is the commitment of the president and the nuclear, less about the missiles. But the combination was, and the argument who pushed whom, I think the answer is no one has to push the other one, because they agreed that they should do something to stop the Iranians. Maybe there was some arguments about the schedule. We need more time than the Americans. We spend a lot of our stores during the war, and we need more time to bring all the munition which is needed. But at the end of the day, as was said by the Minister of Defense in Israel, the demonstration, the issue of the demonstrators escalate the schedule, and the decision was to make it. And I think that about the goal of the war, there is a very strong agreement between the two sides. First, to eliminate totally any ability which is connected either to the missiles or to the nuclear project. Any guy who was there, any building which was connected, any place which was connected, any capability which is needed, everything should be totally destroyed. And it is going on. About the regime change, what people are asking, I think that both sides understand the regime change is something that cannot be guaranteed. The Americans, it's interesting to hear the Secretary of War defining the aims of the war. Of course, the missiles and missiles themselves and production of missiles and the nuclear project, eliminating the Iranian Navy totally. And remember, they found an Iranian ship near Sri Lanka, and they sent it to the bottom of the ocean by a torpedo. And he said this destruction of military facilities. We are speaking about making the regime weaker, to make all what can be prepared to help the opposition to win. I think that at the end of the day, regime change is something that cannot be guaranteed. We don't know how to do it. No one knows how to do it. And no one can say something that will lead to a regime change. It might happen, it might not. What should be done, and I think that this is the plan that the Americans and the Israelis agree about, is whatever will be the regime, if it will be the same regime that the Sun or someone from another organization will be picked by the Iranians regime, the present regime, I don't know. But what should be ensured by the operation, by the war, that any regime, this one or another one, will be very, very weak. And how to measure the weakness of the regime? By looking at the ability of this regime to make damage to Israel, America, American allies, neighbors in the Gulf, and so on and so forth. And it will take a very long time to reduce these capabilities that the Iranians have. It is going to their industry, it is going to their missiles production, it is going to their other means that they built through the years. Unlike what people said that, you know, if Iran will be attacked, hell will come to the world, and the skies will fall on the Middle East. It didn't happen. Yes, they are launching missiles into Bahrain and the Emirates. It's much easier. It's different kind of missile. You know, someone in Israel said, "Oh, they are launching more missiles against the Emirates than to Israel." It's a different kind of missiles. The long range missiles that they need to reach Tel Aviv are not the same kind of missile that they need to reach Doha in one side or Dubai on the other side. It's different and it's much easier. They have probably many more because the long range missiles that they need for Israel are very expensive, unlike the missiles that they need just to cross the Gulf. What will happen afterwards? I don't have an answer. There are two main options. One, that the Arab countries, by the way, I made a calculation, they launch missiles into all the countries in the Middle East but Turkey and Egypt. What happened in Turkey is still I don't understand. Someone told me that it was a missile to Cyprus, which was intercepted by the Americans. And this is why some debris had been found in Turkey. Another one told me that it was in Cherlik, the American base in Turkey. I don't know. But assuming that it was for Cyprus, they launch missiles into all the countries in the Middle East, but Turkey, Egypt, Lebanon, and Syria, and Cyprus and Azerbaijan. What will be the reaction of those countries? What will be the reaction of Azerbaijan? What will be the reaction of the Gulf countries? Will they join the alliance of the Americans and the Israelis? Will they be passive, do nothing? What will happen after the war? Will they say, okay, Iran is too strong, the Americans are not deterring Iran, we have to find kind of way to live with the Iranian regime? Or they will say, no, the Iranians show us that they don't think about us as candidate for any alliance. They are ready to destroy everything in our countries. Most of what they launched was against civilian areas, not American bases, as they say. And they will join kind of a new axis based on America and Israel. I don't know. And I think that this is one of the
Pnina
biggest...
is going to refer to this matter in her turn.
Yes,
Pnina
and this
will
is
have to
no,
get-
but
to come up with an
regarding
answer.
the war, the results of the war, it's one of the results of the war which are unknown, and it is not connected to the goals that we had and the Americans had when we opened with the war, and it is a big question mark. It will be very interesting to hear what people here have to say about that. I want to just mention one issue. I know that someone else will speak about it. From what I heard in our side and in the American side, it is very, very impressive cooperation in the professional level based on the policy level, which was between the prime minister and president. And then an American who is very familiar with the Middle East for many years told me it is we don't have any example of such strong cooperation as we have in this war between the United States and Israel, between the Air Force, the Israeli Air Force, and CENTCOM. And he spent many years in this area. And I think that this trust, which was built between the two sides, it's very important for the future. Someone else will speak about the cooperation itself, but I think that there will be implications for the future because of this trust which was built between the two sides, which count on each other. No one try to change the other side, but to cooperate in a way which is the benefit for both. This is for the beginning. I don't hear you, Yossi. You are unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Amidror. And since you have already raised the question about the Gulf states, and since Pnina is suffering from some problems of health following her
Not that
participation in
dramatic, just a cold. Kind of lost
Just
my voice, but I'll do my best.
Dr. Pnina Shuker is a fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. She's an expert on national security, and recently she's dealing with the Gulf states amongst other issues. So, Pnina, what's going on with the Gulf states? What's going to happen?
Okay, so good evening, everyone. Well, it appears that the Iranian logic behind attacking Gulf states is to create internal instability, aiming to exert indirect pressure on the United States to end the war. It's not a craziness. There is a logic behind this modus operandi. However, it seems these attacks are achieving the exact opposite result, because instead of driving a wedge between regional allies, these actions are fostering a sense of shared threat. So rather than weakening the resolve of Gulf leadership, they are accelerating defense integration and deepening the strategic reliance on international partnerships. So what was meant to be a tool for leverage has instead become a catalyst for a more unified regional front against Iranian aggressiveness, actually. The coordinated US-Israeli attacks on Iran came at a time of discord in Gulf relations. Since early December 2025, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have been in some sort of dispute over political approaches to Yemen and East Africa, particularly Sudan, and competing diplomatic measures threatening to expand their political feud into a regional rift. But with the launch of a second US-Israeli conflict with Iran, that feud has been set aside. Iranian counterstrikes targeting Gulf territories have united the Gulf Arab states in shared outrage and condemnation of Iran. I want to focus mainly at Saudi Arabia and Qatar. First, let's start with the Saudis. So, Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman initiated his reported phone call with Emirati President Mohammed bin Zayed since their dispute began. In a formal statement, the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs not only affirmed its full solidarity with fellow Gulf neighbors, but pointedly asserted Saudi Arabia would be placing all its capabilities at their disposal to support them in all measures they take. And the recent Iranian attacks bring regional relations back into a zone of strategic uncertainty, even if diplomatic ties are not completely severed. Since the reconciliation agreement between Riyadh and Tehran in 2023, the Saudi vision has been centered on one fundamental question. Is Iran truly ready to transition from a policy of managing chaos via its proxies to the conduct of a responsible state? When attacks strike the infrastructure of the sovereign territories of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf, they fundamentally undermine the very core of this strategic assumption. However, Saudi policy typically avoids impulsive or rash reaction. Instead, Riyadh's potential response could evolve in three main directions. First, a significant strengthening of air and missile defense system. Second, expanding security coordination with Gulf neighbors and the United States to protect vital energy infrastructure and maritime routes. And the third is applying international diplomatic pressure to hold Iran accountable for any attack, whether direct or through its proxies. While severe diplomatic ties remains a possibility, Riyadh generally prefers to keep communication channels open, even during periods of high tension, as it serves as a vital tool for crisis management. As for direct military response, it seems not unlikely. This remains the least likely scenario. Historically, Saudi Arabia has not sought an all-out war with Iran. At the same time, it views any strike on its oil or vital facilities as a clear red line. In such a situation, Saudi Arabia might opt for a limited military response, most likely within the framework of a regional or international coalition. And now turning to Qatar, the situation is even more complex. Before the conflict, Doha maintained a delicate balancing act, supporting the Iranian regime while carefully maneuvering to meet American expectations. This relationship was built on open communication, mutual visits, and Qatar's role as a mediator between Iran and the West. Beyond politics, there is a powerful economic anchor. Iran and Qatar shares the world's largest gas field. This necessitates technical cooperation to ensure the continuity of production and export. Furthermore, Qatar's support for Iran has historically extended to the media landscape. Al Jazeera, Doha's central propaganda tool, has consistently framed Iran in a relatively moderate light, systematically avoiding coverage of internal Iranian protests. In fact, Al Jazeera went as far as pointing the finger at Israel and the US, claiming they were the ones fueling internal unrest in Iran. However, the recent Iranian aggression has shifted the ground. The attacks on civilian facilities, and specifically Qatari gas installations, sparked a fierce reaction from Doha. The most significant factor was the attempt to strike Doha International Airport, actually the crown jewel of Qatar's economy and tourism. A spokesperson for the Qatari Foreign Ministry explicitly told CNN that Iran must pay a price for the attack on Qatari soil, noting that communication with Tehran has been severed. While the Iranian foreign minister claimed the missiles were aimed at American interests and not at Qatar, the Qatari prime minister flatly rejected these claims. He accused Iran of dragging its neighbors into war, calling it a blatant violation of sovereignty and international law, declaring that these attacks would not go unanswered. Currently, Qatar is attempting to contain the situation with a measured response. Although it has shut down 2 Iranian aircraft, in typical Qatari fashion, they are not burning all bridges. Doha still calls for a dialogue and seeks to preserve its role as a mediator, even if it means swallowing its national pride. But make no mistake, if Iran continues to strike Qatar's strategic civilian assets, Doha will find it increasingly difficult to maintain long-term ties. The combination of the threat to its airport, its reliance on American protection, and immense pressure from its Gulf neighbors creates a stronger incentive than ever to distance itself from Tehran. While a total break in relation is not yet here, the path toward it has never been shorter. Okay, to wrap it up, 5 days of rocket, almost 6 days of rocket and missile attacks constitute a serious escalation, but they do not yet represent the nightmare scenario, a protracted, grinding conflict measuring weeks or months of sporadic attack, never permitting normalcy. The Gulf Arab states have invested hundreds of billions of dollars repositioning themselves as globally competitive hubs for tourism, finance, logistics, and advanced industry. So the true center of gravity in this conflict is not the asymmetric cost exchange between cheap offensive Iranian missiles, as Amidror presented, and expensive interceptors, but the slow reprising of regional risk, higher insurance premiums, elevated shipping costs, widening sovereign spreads, and the higher cost required to entice foreign human and financial capital to the region. The Gulf states, for their part, have exercised notable restraint in the face of escalating provocations. Yet, the durability of this restraint is uncertain, particularly as Iran continues to escalate. This moment reflects the dangerous convergence of regional instability, domestic pressures, and the risks of unchecked escalation. Adopting the Iranian decentralized mosaic defense strategy, Iran's forces have heightened the likelihood of unpredictable attacks on critical infrastructure and vital energy hubs. The Gulf states now face a dual-front challenge, sustaining effective interception against unpredictable missile swarms while safeguarding domestic stability in the face of pro-Iranian mobilization. Ultimately, the trajectory of this conflict will depend on whether crisis management and containment can prevail over the momentum of confrontation. In this environment, diplomacy is no longer a primary tool for de-escalation, but a secondary mechanism for managing escalation, as the region braces for a neighbor that may perceive itself as having nothing left to lose. That's it for now.
Thank you very much, Pnina. This was very comprehensive. Although I asked myself, maybe you have an answer. What is going to be the straw that will break the camel's back in this game? I mean,
I
they've been
assume that
attacked
severe.
again, again. Nothing has happened.
Okay, so I just assume that maybe severe damage to oil infrastructure, or maybe multiple casualties event. But it seems that the Gulf states will do everything in their power to avoid conflict. That's their tradition. I mean, they don't. They prefer the diplomatic path, but trying to assume what will be the red line, I think that maybe a serious damage to their very core national interest, which is gas and oil infrastructure.
Okay, we'll wait and see. Wait and see. Our next speaker, I see that Gabi is already here, but we'll go first to Dr. Eran Lerman, Colonel in the Reserve, Eran Lerman, who is the Deputy President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, formerly the Deputy of the National Security Advisor for International Affairs, and also many other positions that I'm not going to mention all of them.
But an old American hand, I could say.
An American expert that I can say, an old expert for the United States. And look, something has happened here. How do you understand what happened? What are the American goals?
Let's
what
first
can
of
we learn
all
from them?
restate what General Amidror has already mentioned, but put it in the full proportions. Never before in our history, and we've been working in alignment with the United States. We've been defined as a major non-NATO ally, as a special partner by American legislation. We have had a unique relationship, a special relationship for many years. Never before in our history did we actually work in combined operations mode, something that the last reminiscent of the British and the Americans in Normandy, something of that kind, highly
And even if we did, it was never published.
Well, limited local operations, but this is an ongoing effort, shoulder to shoulder, with full intelligence sharing, with full operational transparency to each other, with highly coordinated division of labor, totally unprecedented. And by the way, I assume the impact on the way the Americans think about Israel is already evident in what Secretary Hegseth said about Israel as a partner, as an ally. But this also permeates today the ranks, the generals, the colonels, the fighter pilots who see Israel as an effective fighting ally, something that they have rarely had, with all due respect to the contributions, and there were contributions in blood and sacrifice by NATO allies in Afghanistan, and by some allies who joined the coalition of the willing in 2003, but nothing of the kind that we are witnessing now. And the roots of this go back to a decision which looked almost technical 5 years ago, to transfer Israel from the European command, the EUCOM, to the CENTCOM area of responsibility. And what it meant is that in addition to the commonality of strategic perceptions, there was now the simple reality that Israel was the most powerful partner CENTCOM had in its entire area of responsibility. I don't want to insult any of our Gulf friends. We are now in the same, essentially facing the same threat. But their strategy over the years has been to buy a lot of expensive American weapons, paying very well for them, so that when the day comes that they face a danger, the Americans will come and fight and do the fighting, so they will be able to continue to buy expensive American weapons. That was essentially the Gulf strategy. Israel plays a very different game. When we say, give us the tool and we shall finish the job, we mean it. But this time, this was a decision taken a few months back to actually look at this entirely as a joint or a combined arms operation. Unprecedented and with remarkable consequences that will continue to reverberate down the road. The American motivation at the highest level, at the level of the president, I think I would discount some of the explanations that have been flying around, that Israel forced his hand, that he is playing a game essentially on oil and China, as he did in Venezuela. I actually believe that the nuclear issue is truly central to his thinking and to the thinking of the American professional community. And they've come to realize, as General Amidror has mentioned, that what happened to the Iranians in June did not dissuade them and from pursuing the course of action of being a threat to the world, a threat to the entire region. And ultimately, this is what Witkoff is now telling us about what truly happened in his talks in Geneva. They were, I think, a genuine attempt to see if the Iranians are willing to bend. Reminds me of Jim Baker meeting with Tariq Aziz a week before the war in 1991. But at the end of the day, they came from these talks with the distinct impression that Arakchi either did not want or was not allowed to offer the necessary concessions that would have made the war, perhaps could have avoided the war. So the decision was taken, and then it was driven, of course, by an intelligence opportunity of the first order. Again, a joint intelligence project that enabled us, Israel, to carry out the decapitation attack. But I cannot even imagine that the Americans were not entirely on board with this strategy of decapitation from well back when the planning process began. Now, what are the Americans trying to achieve? Clearly, the nuclear issue, the ballistic missiles, but now there are two additional elements. One is keep the Straits of Hormuz open. And the president has spoken to that, and the spirit of the fiery speech given by Secretary Hegseth tells you that the hostage strategy, what Pnina described so clearly, what the Iranians are doing essentially is trying to take hostages. A long tradition in Iranian revolutionary policy, going back to what they did to the Americans in 1979. Now they're trying to take the Gulf states hostage, pointing a gun to their head and say, tell the Americans to stop, and trying to take the international economy, the oil-driven economy hostage. And what the Americans are saying was, we're not going to let you do it. And the elimination of the Iranian Navy is essentially, first and foremost, a way of ensuring that they cannot interfere with the trade routes. Next would come, I think, the smaller boats of the IRGC, and I would not rule out temporary control of the shore areas adjoining the Hormuz Straits, just to make sure that they cannot be utilized for anti-ship missiles, short-range anti-ship missiles. The Iranian fantasy that they can hit something the size of an American ship or a tanker, for that matter, with ballistic missiles with that level of accuracy on time is, I think, a fantasy. The danger is anti-ship missiles designed for the purpose, mines and the small boats. And the Americans are fully capable, I believe, of clearing the threats based on the decision to do so. The ultimate question is, of course, what do they have in mind in terms of regime change? And we have to remember that this is an administration, this is a president who spoke very sharply, sometimes viciously, against the folly of the previous adventures in Iraq and even in Afghanistan, the whole huge investment of American lives and money into the fantasy project of regime change in these countries. So the very words regime change are highly problematic for the Trump administration. But what they are, and beyond that, there is, if we go back more than 40 years, there is this famous text called the Weinberg Doctrine. Actually, it's more Powell's doctrine at the time, saying basically we don't go into conflicts without a clear exit strategy. That is the shadow of Vietnam that still falls upon American planning. They want a situation where they know what is to be achieved and where to stop. This was highly problematic in Iraq in 2003. And now they are clearly not willing to set the terms of their purpose in a manner which will trap them into an endless war. What they are saying is, and this is also the language of the Israeli leadership, we are creating the conditions for the Iranian people to take their fate into their hands. And that currently involves, I believe, two things happening already on the ground. One is the erosion not only of the list I've already mentioned, the nuclear, the ballistic missiles, air defense, obviously, that's been ground to dust, and the Navy, but also the destruction of, by Israel and the United States jointly, of the repressive mechanisms of the regime. The jails, the detention centers, the headquarters of the IRGC and the Basijis, the Pasdaran and the Basijis, and essentially creating the conditions under which there can be no repetition of the butchery of January 7th and 8th. And the second thing is, and that's a delicate issue, I'll just touch it because it's just evolving as we speak, is the CIA effort to mobilize and utilize the minorities. The Kurds are being specifically mentioned because they are relatively well-armed, well-organized, and have a base of operations across the border in the KRG. But you could throw in, for example, the Ahwazis, the Arabs of Ahwaz. And by the way, that's something that the Gulf countries can do without open attribution. They can basically help their Arab brethren in the most strategically significant segment of Iran's territory rise against the regime. Then there's the Baluch in the east, and since the Azeris were now stung, they may retaliate not by direct military action, but by helping Azeri elements within Iraq. That's a very delicate part of the emerging equation, because I don't think the Americans want Iran to disintegrate, and many of the opposition leaders are very averse to disintegration. They have memories from 1946 when Stalin, by the way, who died on this date today, 83 years ago, 73 years ago. Stalin tried to hold on to northern Iran as two separate states, Kurdish and Azeri. The memories linger. That's not the desired outcome from an American point of view. But the fear that such uprisings among the minorities will strain the Iranian state beyond its ability to cope is in itself a part of the American strategy at this point. Ultimately, I think that the Americans believe that once Israel and their own effort degrades the Iranian missile capabilities sufficiently, they will remove this hostage-taking situation enough to be able to continue to operate freely until they come to their own judgment that enough has been done to break the framework, the structure of the regime, and leave the rest to the Iranian people to pursue.
Thank you very much, Eran. It's amazing. So we all agree that regime change is a problem. And, even the way towards having it done is not easy. But let's hear from Gabi Siboni, from Colonel in the Reserve, Professor Gabi Siboni, who is the CEO of Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security and also Senior Fellow, and an expert on strategy and national security. That's exactly where he has to be. Gabi, tell us a little bit about what is the Israeli plan and what are the military aspects of what we are watching now evolving in front of us in Iran, and where do you see this entire episode in the wider war that Israel is waging against the axis of evil ever since October 7th, 2023? Please.
Thank you, Cooper. I never say that I'm an expert. Expert, there is only one expert. I research those topics. Okay, so to start with, I think it is best to start with the context of this operation in the war of revival, because we have been waging war since October 7th, and since the beginning, we were confused. Many were confused. Where are we going? What is the strategy? Everybody asked, what is the strategy? Where are we going? And I think that if you look at it carefully, you clearly see a very, let's say, clear strategy of Israel developed by our Prime Minister and the cabinet, which was to eliminate the proxies of Iran, isolate Iran, and then deal with Iran. That's what we see. So we eliminated Hamas, mostly. We have still a job to do. We did not finish the job. Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, they were Sunni organization, but supported heavily by Iran, the Shiite Iran. Mainly the Islamic Jihad was really a close part of jihad of Iran, but Hamas was also supported heavily by Iran. Then eliminated Hezbollah to a position where it became non-relevant to the existing, let's say, combat arena. Still Hezbollah, we see that we still have a job to do again with Hezbollah, and we are doing it as we speak, because Hezbollah, as a shadow of what he was, tries to, let's say, support its sponsors in Iran, and trying to launch some rockets and to do some offensive activity, but I think we are dealing with this as we speak. And by then isolating Iran from Syria, which was again a great opportunity where we eliminated the regime of Assad in Syria. We got a different problem. We are not dealing with that now, but still it is an isolation to Iran. Iran has been isolated from Syria, then Iran is stuck with itself. I said, from many years, I advocate the fact that Iran in itself without its proxies is a tiger made of paper. Really not a very big challenge. Of course, they have the rockets, they have many things, but it is not an issue that Israel cannot deal with. And that's what we see now. So in all, when you look at the grand strategy of Israel, you see that we have went all the way through the last 2.5 years to get to Iran, where it is now. We started with the last operation in Iran. I don't know the English names, but I think you all know in the last June, the operation with Iran, and now we're doing
Rising
Rising
Lion.
Lion.
yeah, well, I know, but I'm so tired of trying to translate those Hebrew biblical names so in English, so I leave it like this. And where we are now trying to deal with Iran. Now, regarding what we are doing now together with the United States, this, we used to have. Israel was isolated, if we all recall, from the Five Eye alliance, if we recall, that the UK, France, Canada, Australia, I don't know, maybe New Zealand was part of it, I don't know. And Israel was always looking in envious eyes to we can get an advanced technology from them, we get some cooperation with them. And we were put aside with this alliance. And we look at it now, you see a completely different picture. UK, France, there is nothing to say about those countries. They are lost. Spain, well, I'm part of the Spanish academia, but maybe they regret it by now. But anyway, I think we are seeing what's happening in Europe, and this is gone. And what you see is a beacon. That's the Israel position as, let's say, the top ally, an equal ally to the US. And, they continue saying that the Israeli Air Force and the American Air Force are the top air forces globally, mentioning this message goes to China and Russia. And I think it is not confusing. This is the case. And we are now not only coordinating with the US, we are working shoulder to shoulder. We are attacking shoulder to shoulder. I remind you all that during Second World War II, the two air forces of the Americans and the British were working together, but not together. They were working separately. Normally, the attacks during the day were by the Americans, and the attacks during the night were by the British, or vice versa. I can't recall now which is which. But they just split the job between them. And here we see we are mixed together, working as united force, really a united force together, which is amazing. I've just read, I don't know if it is correct, I've just read that there was an American pilot that was rescued by an Israeli rescue unit in Iran. So this is really, it strikes an amazing. Another thing regarding the military operations. I think we all have heard the way Hackset refers to those international tribunals, international law, all this, sorry to say, bullshit. And say that we are here to win. Whereas Israel, during decades, has put on the Israeli forces, we ourselves put on Israeli forces, layers of constraints, on constraints above constraint. And we fail to understand that our job is simply to kill the enemy. We try to give alert, to alert people with a knock on the roof procedure, which is something fantastic nobody can imagine with the international law. We have done tremendous thing to put constraints on us. And now Hexet, as he refers, the rules of engagement of the American forces is so much different to what we did. And I am sure that while we are working together in this operation, we are adopting those rules of engagement. We are not, trying to adopt what the constraints we have put. And this is something very important, Only 2 days ago, the US have sunk an Iranian ship in international waters without any alert, without any warning. A submarine just sent a torpedo and sunk the ship on its crew. This is, if you think that could Israel ever do something like this, I could not imagine. And I think Hackset and the American put a mirror in front of us, telling us this is the way to act. And I think it's begun reflecting us as well, the way we deal with Lebanon now. Sorry for my voice. Now, regarding what was mentioned here, the goals of this war, I just want to mention that regime change were never a bad word with the Americans. The problem is that when they said regime change, they immediately added the word democracy, deliver democracy to those people, trying to think that also Hamas is an outcome of the democracy that Bush have enforced us to have elections, including Hamas, including in Gaza and Judea and Samaria. The Americans, the problem is not the regime change. The problem was, and I think again the American officials have said that again, that the issue of trying to to bring democracy to the people, trying to patronize the people. This is not the case in Iran. I think we don't care, and nor the American cares if there is a democracy in Iran or not. We only care of our interests to make sure that whatever regime is there, democracy or not, whether they can choose whatever they want. In my view, a dictatorship, I don't care. The interests are that they are not hostile to Israel and not hostile to the US. And the interests, of course, we see the big financial petroleum interests in Iran are kept, and the Americans are safe, and the Israeli, whatever we are part of it, are safe with that. So I think this is the issue. If we take out the word democracy, we open a very, very large number of opportunities to deal with Iran, the post-Iran, the new Iran that will come out of this war. And I hope the Iranian people will take their destiny in their own hands. We will provide, together with the Americans together, we will provide all assistance that we can deliver to the Iranian people so they can take their destiny in their own hand and throw this Ayatollah regime to the garbage bin of history. That's our goal. That's the goal of the war. And I think we need to make sure that we achieve this goal and at least create the opportunity. I don't know if it will succeed, but at least create the opportunity in Iran to do so. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be very violent because this regime is not going to give up very easily. But we will need to take down as much capabilities as we can from them to create the best conditions for the Iranian people and including the minorities. Really, I don't think we need to deal with that. It will stabilize however it stabilizes, as Syria is whatever it stabilizes, which is whatever happens in Iran. Hopefully, the main goal is to take out this regime and to make sure that the next regime is not hostile to the US and Israel. That's the point. Of course, to the other Gulf countries or whatever, this was mentioned. I don't want to repeat it. And in the end, I think that we are learning from the Americans now, we Israelis. We are learning a very important lesson regarding the way military operation should be conducted to make sure that we are doing it to kill the enemy and to win the war and not to play games with this impossible international law obligation that we have put on ourselves. And we lost the clear view of what is really the international law. And we created the monster that we need now to disassemble. Thank you very much, Cooper. Hopefully it was clear and
Very clear, very clear.
thank you.
Not easy, but clear.
I never promised to be easy.
But let's go to Alex. We have also time limit, so let's go to Alex. Dr. Alex Grinberg is Mr. Alex Grinberg is a PhD candidate in Tel Aviv University, focusing on Iranian history and Iranian issues, and he's the senior fellow on Iran in the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. And it's always a pleasure to listen to Alex when he speaks about Iran, because beyond other stuff, he's also speaking the language and knows the in and out of the Iranian society. So Alex, tell us, what is the strategy of Iran? What they are trying to accomplish? Why do they do what they do? And what can we expect to see happening there in the future? And what's going on with this Iranian opposition? Are they really up to the job? Please, Alex.
Thank you, Yossi. Good evening, everyone. So I am going to deliver a short briefing of what is going on, because all the aspects you mentioned are intertwined. First of all, I would like to remind the goal when I hear all these musings and chats about strategy or not strategy. The goal is to break the back of the enemy, first of all. Regime collapse, regime change, if it happens, okay, nice, but this is a goal, because I would like to remind to everyone, people tend to forget that. Why did Israel start the war? For nearly half a century, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, has killed and maimed American citizens and service members through its own forces and proxy militias. More Americans have been killed by Iran than any other terrorist regime on earth, let alone Iranian attacks against the Jews in the world, because they're Jews, not only Israelis and not even army or Israeli servicemen. It's more than ars poetica justice that the regime who chants death to Israel, death to America, Mark Bar Israel, Mark Bar America, is getting now death from Israel and America. The internal conditions. To the moment, what is going on is that the people remain passive, well, because of bombings, you know, despite the fact that many Iranians are happy, and I think most Iranians are happy to see our or American planes hovering in the sky of Tehran and other cities. Still, it is dangerous to take to the streets when you have bombings. There are President Trump's instruction to the Iranians not to take to the streets now, because the regime forces are still active. What we can see is systematic destruction by Israeli Air Force, but also American, of stadiums in many Iranian cities. I wondered why stadiums are targeted, because RGC and Basij use stadiums for gathering and deploying. So if we destroy these facilities, they have less places to hide as a units, because only in such a large place as stadium you can enter many people. Next, there is still total internet blackout, even more severe than the blackout that preceded the war, which makes communication between people in Iran next to impossible. So this is also one of the factors. Some people do have Starlink, indeed, but these people are happy pretty few. It's a serious problem that should be resolved. Also, B2 and B1 strikes were reported. They targeted underground missile bases, what is called Shahra Mushiki, that are very difficult to be targeted. And as far as I know, Israel Air Force has a problem to destroy some of these underground facilities, yet their destruction is crucial because this will deny and destroy Iranian ballistic missile arsenal. Of course, launchers are destroyed everywhere where they are spotted, and this is the course of action that keeps going. The show keeps going, and one can see that Israeli Air Force works rather in the north and the west of Iran, whereas American planes take off from the air carriers, and so it's easier for them to get to the south of Iran and more to the east. Now, what is the situation of the regime? So it's true that they elected a triumvirate, but the triumvirate consists of President Pezeshkian, Mohsen Ejei, the head of the judiciary, and Arefi, another Ayatollah that whom they just picked up, and that's it. Ejei is the only serious person. Whereas the real triumvirate that is not mentioned and evoked publicly is that consisting of Ejei, Mohsen Ghalibaf, and also I forgot Ali Lerjani. The most powerful people of the Islamic Republic to moment, and of course Mojtaba, that is the Khamenei's son. It is not clear whether he survived or not, but maybe yes. And the Mojtaba Khamenei was elected not only because he is the son of his dad, but because he indeed has managerial skills and political skills, because he was running Beit Rahbari, the office of the Supreme Guide, which is an opaque government body, but this opaque body is in charge of real strategic decision-making. It was bombed. And as long as this system and these people exist, the regime sort of keeps existing. And it is very important to remember that it was not a dictator. Iran has never been a dictatorship in the Russian meaning of the term, where you have a vertical vlasti, the vertical of power, so it's clear. It is very dispersed. It is a regime, a mafia regime, that is based on networks of influence, various channels, and for example, those RGC officers who manage bunyads, secret funds of the Islamic Republic. It's not only that they are corrupt and have a lot of bucks, but it means that their networks of influence are very, very powerful, because it also touches on the issue of Iran's secret shadowy economy, etc., etc. And for example, to name just the few, it's who were not have not been eliminated hitherto. It's Yahya Rahim Safavi, former IGC commander, still alive. Mohammed Ali Aziz Jafari, also foreign IGC commander. Hussein Dehqan, military advisor to the supreme leader, to Khamenei. And Hussein Dehqan is, so to say, CEO, I don't know, CEO, chairman of the Bunyad Mustazafin, the foundation of the oppressed, one of the most monstrous, hugest, these funds, Bunyad. These are very powerful people, and they must be done in ASAP because like they're very dangerous. But again, all these scenarios about possible power transition, games, whatever, are fine, yet none of the scenarios that I have seen consider the current conditions of Iran. It is all under bombings, and all these chains must and can be disrupted and destroyed. So, as I say, the goal is to break up the back of the enemy and to break separately all the vertebrae of this spine, and this way it will stop functioning. Because if someone intends saying a regime collapse, regime change, that the regime or some its members, like in Nazi Germany, will sign a capitulation or will declare that we dissolute ourselves, here are the keys, catch them, it won't happen, but the regime can be destroyed. So the goal is to destroy the regime. And again, if someone is wary of my vocabulary, okay, this is the regime that massacred and butchered dozens of thousands of its citizens. It's a regime that is sadistic and that blackmails money from the families only to get the dead bodies of their dear ones who were massacred. So this regime must be destroyed. There is no, and its geopolitical behavior proves that no way one can to compromise with this regime. And now several words about the tactics and the tactics, systems, and strategy. So what can be seen that they're shelling or launching missiles on the Gulf countries. I thought erroneously it was only just a stupid thing, but in fact they have several goals. First, it's to I don't know which word to employ, to decrease the American firepower so that the Americans will have to deal more with the protection than with attacking Iran. It won't help, of course, but still they hope to saturate the American air defense systems exactly the way they hope to do it to us. I still don't know whether it was confirmed by CENTCOM, but the Iranians are using exactly the same tactics as Hezbollah used against us after the 7 October, meaning that Hezbollah has a capacity to blind or to kill, neutralize our radars and to spot vulnerabilities in our air defense systems. And the Iranians say they managed to hit THAAD systems. I don't know, I heard that it was confirmed by CENTCOM, but I still don't know. And this is a serious military goal. Again, it is not crucial. It won't finish the American effort, but there is logic. It's not only, you know, to blackmail the Arab countries so that they pressure America, etc., etc. Now, also their attacks on the Gulf countries proved two things: that the regime is incurably aggressive. I could never imagine they would fire on Dubai and Qatar. That's really insane. And also they attacked with drones Azerbaijan, which spoiled for good all Turkey's calculus vis-a-vis Iran, because Turkey is not interested in chaos in Iran. It's not interested in the collapse of the Iranian regime, but it's clear that Iran, theoretically, if this regime stays at the helm, it will never be able to restore its relations with all the adjacent countries. they rekindled the Shia-Sunni enmity because they targeted those Sunni countries who never thought of any confrontation with Iran. And
They
finally,
hit Shiite countries as well. There is a Shiite.
well, as there is our Shiite, as you know, as most my native community, Russian Jews are Jews. So this is, you know, it's not a calculus, and they're like, but they really don't reconfirm anything. And I think it's also, no one says that, I say that, it's a lesson for us Israelis. What we could see that all Arab countries are weak, just weak, rich guys with a lot of money who crucially depend on American protection, and that's what we see. I say nothing new. For that reason, all this Israeli chatter talk about, wow, what the Saudis will think of what this or another Israeli minister said, normalization, when it is understated that we must give up some serious security assets in exchange for normalization. So it proves what is going on. In the last moment, the Kurds. Okay, I saw also a question in the chat. So I'm sure that what is said on CNN does not necessarily reflect the reality. Maybe it is what the administration wants to show for reasons of PW, psychological warfare, whereas what is prepared in reality is something else. It is not that the Kurds will liberate Tehran or something like that. It's a straw man argument that one can see very often. They try to use the Kurds. It will rouse the ire of Iranian nationalists that don't want the Kurds. I don't think it's about that, and I don't pretend, of course, to knowledge what is really going on, but it is known that the province of Kurdistan in Iran, I'm not talking about Kurdistan in Iraq, it is home to at least 5 armed Kurdish movements. They're small, they're not significant, but they are, so to say, professional. They have real combat experience. They are neither Islamists nor communists like PKK. So they're very comfortable partners, and they are the warranty of stability, because Kurdistan, Iraq is a very stable country. So the proof is that no one hears anything about that. And the goal is, I think, again, only my speculation, is to use the Iranian province of Kurdistan as a springboard for planning further operations in Iran, for delivering weapons, for organizing other resistance groups, because only in Kurdistan it is possible to get rid of the control of IRGC, because there are some people already, there have always been there. And to move forward. Also, never forget that one of the missions of Delta Force is helping clandestine movements. It also exists. It is possible, and that's all from the operational point of view. And just I want to end with several statements regarding all these speculations about strategy, regime collapse, etc., etc. The main methodological flow in all these arguments about regime change or regime collapse is that the debate often relies on straw man arguments. First, not all the goals are always publicly articulated by no country. This is how it goes. Academics, journalists, or public intellectuals who criticize the American or Israeli governments for lacking a strategy often do not propose an alternative strategy, or they may actually mean that the government is not executing the preferred strategy, meaning that the government is not executing my strategy, it means the government doesn't have strategy. It's not exactly so. And although it is true that finding an historical precedent for regime change without boots on the ground is difficult, the assumption is not an unbreakable law. It's not a law of physics that I'm trying to create an electric circle contrary to the laws of physics. It's not a precise term. And finally, these concepts like regime change, victory, whatever, they are. I'm an historian by my education and profession, and I know that it is not rocket science. It is not. It's not a science. It's a discipline, and all these notions and terms are prone to various interpretations. What one means by regime collapse or regime change, etc., etc. And the last thing may be disagreeable to hear, because all those who quote, for example, Iraq and Afghanistan as an example of our regime change, it's bad. Why it is bad? Because Iraq and Afghanistan. But those people often forget to refer to the motives of all those wars. And one can clearly see over the history that the American interventions ended bad when the American motivation was, in every particular case, was driven by Wilsonian motives. For example, bring liberal democracy to Afghanistan and Iraq without that the Iraqis or Afghanis asked that. Here, in this case, in Iran, like in Chile, 73, and other cases, also Mossadegh, 53, there were clear American interests, vital interests, and everything depends on the skin in the game. When you have the real skin in the game, then you plan seriously, you think deeper. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. As I said before, it's always a pleasure to listen to you. One thing that you didn't mention, two issues that you didn't mention that if you can refer to very briefly, because we are really running out of time, is the idea that the Artesh is going to change the direction of its barrels. And secondly, what is the role of Pahlavi in this entire episode?
Okay, so I already, how to say, מקדים תרופה למכה. The idea that Artesh is going to revolt, who is prone to revolt, lacks...
Is the regular army, yes?
Yeah, regular army lacks factual basis because it is based, I don't know upon what it is based, but I suppose it is based upon a linear extrapolation from the Shah's army. So the Khomeini did not trust the Shah army, and in particular Air Force, and that's why he created the RGC. Now, it has nothing to do with the past, because the army underwent dozens of purges. It is ideologically completely aligned with Velat Faqih, with RGC, and etc., etc. The current chief of staff, or what is the American title of a joint command? It's
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Yeah, so in Iran, thank you. So in Iran, it's exactly the same, because it is called Farmandeh Setad Kul, because it's the missiles are united with the RGC and the army. They join efforts. Vahidi, he's an artilleryman. He's he's an army man, but he's a perfect RGC ideologist, etc., etc. There is no difference. And all the rest of the army, so it is underfunded. It's true that they hate RGC, but they hate RGC because the RGC receive more money. That's all. And it relies upon compulsory service, soldiers who don't have any motivation, and in general they are like deployed in across Iran in various cities, and they either way they don't have any capacity to deploy swiftly forces in each part of Iran. They just, you know, it's they're practically
You don't buy
speaking
it.
useless.
Let's be short. You don't buy this option.
No, because it's because simply there is no,
You
and
explain.
finally, the most important, there are no signs whatsoever that could hint at this possibility. And the last questions are Pahlavi. So, okay, Pahlavi, again, I don't know. I think it is possible because when I hear a logical assumption that, for example, that Pahlavi doesn't have support among Iranians, okay, I see it as an historian. It's only an assertion. It's not a fact. It's an assertion, logical, but no one has ever conducted independent polls in Iran, and no one could hear in all the Iranian cities, Pahlavi Barmi Gardad, Pahlavi return or Pahlavi is returning. And it's very simple. Everyone must understand. I know that intellectuals and professors, academics in the Western world sometimes fail to understand basic human behavior. So basic human behavior necessitates having symbols, figures, and it can be such a figure. Why not? And if someone still does not believe me, is skeptical, so Zelensky is not so famous stand-up actor, was known. And still there are people in the West who thinks that he is, if not a messiah, at least Churchill. So why not Pahlavi? It doesn't mean he's perfect, but he can maybe a figure to rally around the flag. And by the way, no one in Iran is rallying around the flag, contrary to all these prophecies, see what will happen. No one rallies around the flag, but one might have rallying around the flag of Pahlavi. Why not? It is possible. I don't say it will happen. It's possible.
Thank you, Alex. And I have a question to Amidror and Gabi. How long this is going to last?
From what I understand, what the Americans are saying, publicly and not publicly, they speak about few weeks. How few, I don't know. But I think it will be between 2 to 6 weeks. They have to reach the point, as Gabi said, that they will agree, the Americans and the Israelis sitting together say, it's weak enough. And the list is very long, and they have enough munition, unlike what was declared by others. When it is not out of Tehran, but above Tehran, it's very easy. It's very cheap munition. You don't have long-range munition, which the Americans have huge numbers. I think that is the few weeks.
Gabi, what's your
I
take on
don't
that?
know. I really don't know. I have no clue. I think if I would be a decision maker, I'd say as much as is needed until we achieve our goals.
If I may add,
that's what the
okay,
Americans are saying. As much as we will be needed.
Yes, Pnina.
Okay, I think it also depends on American public opinion, because we see even at this early stage of the war that the American public is not very supportive of this war. And, when casualty mounts, then legitimacy will erode.
There is no any reason for casualties. It was kind of a bad luck. It might happen, of course, but there is no any reason, the way that the Americans are conducting the war, there is no any reason for big casualties. It might
Let's take,
happen,
for example, a scenario of a long-range missile hit American carrier. It's possible.
It's possible, very, very limited chances.
I agree, because there are no boots on the ground, yes. And by the way, this method of no boots on the ground resulted from the low American willingness to tolerate casualties.
No,
So I believe this
because Iran, because if you want to go with boots on the ground to Iran, you need 1 million people. It's not in the calculation. It's too big, it's too complicated. I mean, here and there you can use, but it is not in the cards.
Yeah, I agree. But if you pose,
not only because the calculation of the casualties, it is
no, not it's not standalone.
Huge place.
Yeah.
It's a huge place.
Yeah, I agree.
Iran.
And okay, sorry, Alex, go ahead.
No, just I would like to add that it is very unclear how one find a stage or finish the battle. I mean, suppose we will reach a moment when the resistance of the regime is finished. Let's say it's possible, but still there will remain many thugs with weapons who killed people. They are there. It is not units that you can fight them, but they will remain. And I have no idea how one can overcome them. Then the Americans will have to arm people, to organize some groups of people, because otherwise I simply cannot imagine what can be done.
Eran, this note of Alex, I come back to you, because what I heard from the president of the United States was that what he has in mind is not necessarily a revolution that would bring the people to the power, but that something that will emerge from the existing government will continue to take control of the situation. Maybe he thinks about some sort of a Venezuelan example or something like that. I don't know what he has in mind exactly. What do you think about this option, and what's going to be the Israeli attitude towards it?
Frankly, I think that, and here I echo what Gabi said earlier, bringing democracy to Iran, which is, of course, the one reason for which people would be willing to go into the streets and die for. But for the Trump administration, it's fairly low down the list of purposes and priorities. There's the nuclear issue, there's the regional balance, there's holding China by the short hairs on oil supply. There are many priorities above the question of, do we bring democracy to Iraq? And therefore, there was no immediate reaction, gut reaction to the butchery in January. Having said this, in order to have an exit strategy, in order to explain to himself and to the American people at which point you can speak of an achievement, a fundamental change in the nature of the Iranian regime is necessary. Whether it will have to come from within, there's not going to be any march on Tehran like Baghdad in 2003. But the change will have to be significant enough for people to recognize this as the achievement of the operation. It could come from within the regime. It could come from without. It could lead to more decentralized Iran, as I mentioned. All of these are open options. The one key element on which is going to be consistent is that it wants to degrade the ability of the regime to prevent all of this from happening. But will he find a Pezeshkian or maybe people are speculating that maybe there is already an agent of Israel and the United States at high places, because some of the information must have come from human sources. If he finds a man or a group within the system to work with, he would do so. I don't think he you would rule out a Venezuelan arrangement like the one he has now with Delcy Rodriguez. But the likelihood, this is a very different event. This is not a singular arrest of a leader. This is decapitation, strike against the system, and then it's systemic destruction. So what will emerge out of this is not going to be anything like the Iranian regime that we knew until the 28th of February.
Well, we're up with time. So thank you very much, everybody. I think this was very teaching and interesting. Thank you very much. And thank for the audience. And we'll put the entire thing on our website soon. Thank you very much again, and have a safe night.